So y'all's cousins really out here trying to win Darwin's, huh? Good afternoon, party people. It's your favorite Aquarian auntie Yael, aka Blue Dynamite, and this is your news with a view. Up first, Israel goes full-on dystopian antagonist. Tensions in the Gaza have been rising steadily between Israel and Palestine over the last few weeks, ramping up with today's attack on a media building in Palestine. Israel claims it's because a militant leader of the Hamas group was headquartered in the media building. But seeing as this whole most recent conflict started after Israel ran like some kind of false flag social media planting operation, for them to take out a major media building which housed both AP and Al Jazeera, a major source of news in the area, it's clear they're coming for China's crown as most likely to be a YA villain. For those of you wondering, how on earth can you support Palestine? We're supposed to stand with Israel like God intended. Honestly stand with anyone being oppressed by a system, especially those being oppressed by people hiding behind religion who are really just power-hungry zealots. Speaking of zealotry, Americans on the East Coast can rejoice as Colonial Pipeline has now had its services restored. Y'all can tell your hillbilly cousins to stop hoarding gas in trash cans now. I must admit it's been fairly entertaining to see people line up to win Darwin Awards by hoarding gas and later on blowing up in some way, shape, or form. It'll be nice to have gas prices kind of simmer down back to where they were before. Next up, the US has a corporation problem. That's right, US companies are finally coming to terms with the fact that they just might have to start paying people to work for them. What's ironic is they describe this whole thing as a labor shortage, when in reality it's not a labor shortage. Labor shortage would be defined as when you can't find any qualified workers to do the jobs that you're asking them to do. Problem is, employers are super cheap nowadays and expect people to do the work of 3 people for the price of 1, and usually for under $15 an hour. All while receiving economic bailout packages for the whole coronavirus thing. Isn't that wonderful? Most insane part of the whole thing is the people who keep arguing that, well, if we raise their wages, then everything else is gonna go up in price. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, sweet pea, but that's already happening. All joking aside, this situation in Israel and Palestine really has me concerned. Any country that makes an attack on another country's media sources, while simultaneously using rumors to start a conflict with another country? That's something straight out of 1984. I can't imagine what the people who are going to be growing up during this time are going to have to be dealing with as a result of this. And if this kind of conflict continues, I'm afraid of what might happen if other countries have to get pulled into it, especially the US. Meanwhile, in the US, you still got the GOP defending what took place outside the Capitol on January 6th. Self-aware tramps that Marjorie Greene Taylor harassing AOC during congressional proceedings. Matt Gaetz still defending his choice to solicit underage girls for sex. Black NFL players having to fight for access to money from the settlement from concussions because of the outdated practice known as race norming, in which people assume that black people start out with lower IQs, therefore they have to prove they fell farther cognitively in order to qualify for the settlement. Most importantly, I must stress this, the GOP is still supporting the people who went ahead and attacked the Capitol on January 6th. Honestly, with all this chaos going on at home, and the sinking realization that Joe Biden and his team are probably not going to be able to pull out the victories that they need in order to get his name in the history books the way it needs to be. Primarily because the GOP is fucking insane. And the Democrats are still trying to treat them as rational human beings. This kind of conflict would be the perfect reprieve and distraction from everything else that's been going on. Which is why I'm concerned about the U.S. Uncle Samming its way into this situation. It's not like war hasn't been used as a tool of distraction before by our country. Because the only thing that's more American than white supremacy and hoarding supplies during shortages is getting involved in a lengthy and costly war just to boost profit margins. Hey, with all the gas those idiots hoarded, we probably won't have to pay as much for bombs. What y'all got next on y'all apocalypse bingo cards? I get the bulk of my news from TMZ, Twitter feeds, CNN, and a couple of other places. But if you see something you want me to cover, don't be shy, tag me in.
Never been afraid to speak my mind.